Hi, my name's Tracy Butler and I'm going to take you through the certification of provider training for the inTime program. You've received the link to the webpage and you'll notice that there's some resources also included on that webpage. I encourage you to spend some time going through them and pay particular attention to the listening schedules, which you'll be able to use at a later date with those that you're working with. And in addition to that, the activity schedule is another thing for you to have a look at and become familiar with. At the end of this pre-study session with me, I encourage you to use the samples of listening to inTime. There's a percussion version of it available to you, as well as the combined version, which will make more sense to you once we've gone through these PowerPoint slides that we're going to go through today. You don't need to print off your PowerPoints. That's an option for you. You may choose to use them on a different computer or to save them for later use. You've got full flexibility with what you do with that. So now we'll get started. So here we have the inTime provider training course. So the learning objectives are to help you get an understanding of what inTime is all about and to know the intention behind it. And I should say, because I didn't, thank you for dedicating your very precious time to learning more about inTime, and I hope that it's something that you can integrate into your practice and find an extremely additional tool to be able to use. So the concept behind inTime is straightforward. Combined with music and activity, rhythm and sound have the capacity to bring about change. The brain is musical. Neuroscience has proven through functional brain imaging that music engages more areas of the brain than any other stimulus. Rhythm is the most important fundamental aspect of music. Our brain function is dependent upon complex rhythms of activity that guide interactions between brain regions to synchronize neural networks. Our brain health and brain-body connection depend on rhythm. And we also know that sound is considered to be an important nutrient to the brain. So inTime was developed over the course of more than 5 years by the multidisciplinary team behind the listening program. It's the first program to integrate rhythm with structured sound frequency stimulation. Its creators and producers are OT Sheila Allen, composer and musician Nacho Aramani, and author, founder and CEO of Advanced Brain Technologies, Alex Stoneman. inTime is a rhythm-based music listening method that's developed to influence brain performance. As with all of our other listening programs, the method is practiced on a regular basis, 5 days a week. The duration of daily practice and the overall program depends on the needs and the goals of the listener. So now we're going to look at sound and rhythm in time. We're going to look at sound as movement in time and how sonic elements are influenced by time. And we're going to look at ways in which sound is organised within music, discuss rhythm as a movement in time and what that role is in music, and also discuss what that influence is that rhythm provides. So this next question is really interesting, and I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen so that you can actually write down the answers to 2 questions that I'm going to ask you. So if we look at the slide, what is time then? If nobody asks me, I know. If I have to explain it to someone who's asked me, I do not know. So I want you to write down for me how you would define time. Write down how you would explain what time is to another person. It's very challenging, isn't it? How do you keep time? Again, it's another challenging question, but we all know what time is, but we can't actually explain what it is. So let's talk about sound as an event in time. We know that sound is a form of energy that is produced and carried by vibrating matter. Sound and our ability to tune into sound is dependent upon time. Have you noticed that many of the individuals who have auditory processing difficulties additionally have difficulties with time concepts? And have you noticed that as you work with these individuals and improve their auditory processing, you have feedback that their understanding of time has improved? All of a sudden, they start to get yesterday, 5 minutes, tomorrow, a week ago. Sound comes from a vibration or a movement. Atoms and molecules that make up various media, such as air, are always moving, and when these particles are acted upon, the vibration begins a sequence of waves of pressure that are transmitted through that medium. As the waves move through matter, they cause vibration. So time is involved here. Vibrations are picked up by the ear if they occur at a frequency that is within the range of the ear's sensitivity. The auditory ear picks up vibrations at a frequency of 20 to 20,000 cycles per second, or hertz. The gravitational receptors of the vestibular system are activated by low-frequency sound vibrations less than 1,000 hertz. Only through bone conduction can sound vibration at safe listening levels activate the saccule and the utricle of the vestibular apparatus. This is really important for us to note when we consider whether we're going to use air conduction delivery only or air and bone conduction delivery with our listening programs. We know that bone conduction is the only method that will activate that vestibular system. So from the pushing of the stapes bone onto the oval window to the basilar membrane vibrations, the hair cell movement, and the initiation of the neural impulse, activities occur within the ear at a rate that corresponds with the frequency of the incoming vibration. For example, a 500 Hz tone in which the vibration is occurring 500 times within a second, the footplate of the stapes pushes 500 times per second. This is the beginning of temporal coding, or the system's ability to organize its activity in time. When we really look at this, the ear naturally syncs up with the timing of the vibration it receives. Don't you think this is an example of resonance occurring with amazing precision? So temporal coding is a mechanism beginning with activation of the cochlea, whereby the frequency of the neural impulses delivered to the brain match the incoming sound frequency. The correspondence between sound frequency and neural response, or consistent coding of time patterns, plays a critical role in transmitting the pitch of a sound. This slide depicts temporal coding on the left, illustrating that neurons fire action potential in phase with sound waves. On the right side, place coding is represented, showing how pitch perception depends upon the specific site of stimulation. Cells located at different sites along the auditory pathway within that basilar membrane respond to different sound frequencies. This spatial organization projects in an established pattern from cochlea to auditory cortex, relaying the full 20 to 20,000 Hertz spectrum of sound frequency input. According to neuroscientist and Professor A.R. Moller, the temporal coding of sounds is more important for discrimination of speech than place coding is. From that standpoint, it's interesting to note that it is said to occur only up to 5,000 Hertz due to the rapidity of the movement. And we know that our speech language frequency is roughly 500 to 4 to 5,000 Hertz. So Moller in Hearing and Perception went on to refer to what's become an important auditory neuroscience consideration: discrimination of interaural time difference, a brainstem level detection that occurs at the superior olive, based on timing of impulses from left and right that contributes at a basic level to our awareness of sound in space. Discrimination is so precise that differences of even 3 milliseconds can be detected. Efficiency of timing within all direct and indirect pathways and connections of the neuro-auditory system, both ascending and descending, contributes to efficient, timely responses. As we'll go on to discuss in Research and Rhythm, research by neuroscientists Tierney and Krauss, published in the Journal of Neuroscience, links the consistency of brainstem auditory neural responses to sound with the ability to move to a beat. So we've talked a good deal about sound frequency, and now we're going to make it relevant. The frequency of the recurrence of sound wave within a second's time determines the pitch or tone of a sound. So time is important for pitch. Along with time's importance for pitch comes its importance for resonance, the natural tendency for the frequency of vibration of a source to cause the vibration of something else. Essentially, everything has a resonant frequency or a frequency at which vibration occurs more easily. When resonant frequencies match up, vibrational influences are most easily shared. The amplitude or strength of a sound wave is based on the height of the wave within its cycle in time. Sounds we perceive as loud or louder are of relatively high amplitude, while softer sounds have less amplitude. Thirdly, our understanding of and orientation to sound in space, which contributes to our overall spatial awareness, is dependent upon time. Lastly, sound or movement input that has a strong organized rhythm or pulse can influence other rhythms through the universal phenomenon of entrainment, bringing synchrony. It's an interesting one to think about, and I know all of us often use the expression, I got all caught up in it. And you become aware that when you're around people that are very stressed or very high energy, your body will often pick up on that energy and you yourself start to feel that same influence. So it's really important that we're all mindful of our own timing and how it's influencing our stress and also, very importantly, our calm. So let's take a look at these basic definitions. So meter is the time signature or the measure of a piece of music. Cycle is the unit of time within which the rhythm occurs. Rhythm is that pattern or recurrent sequence of movement of sound. Tempo is how fast it is. And the pulse, that's our beat, our anchor, our home point. Have you thought about recently or consciously considered working with your own rhythm and seeing how that affects you? This quote from Sufi master brings forth the importance of rhythm in our lives. I absolutely love this quote. So motion is the significance of life, and the law of motion is rhythm. Rhythm is life disguised in motion. And in every guise, it seems to attract the attention of man. It is the very nature of man's whole constitution. It is the breaking of rhythm that is called disease. So our health, movement, emotional well-being, our engagement, our social relatedness, our cognition and our communication are among the many attributes linked to rhythm. So entrainment is a way in which musical and non-musical rhythm impacts upon human functioning. Technically speaking, it's a universal tendency to share rhythm or vibrate in harmony due to the naturally occurring physical phenomena of a mutual phase locking that occurs when two oscillators vibrating within the same field tend to synchronize the phases of their vibration. External and internal rhythms affect us. we are moving, dynamic, polyrhythmic organisms. Entrainment also involves our attention, apart from but closely related to our motor behaviour, according to Mari Rees-Jones, PhD and Professor of Psychology at Ohio State University, who focuses her research on the effects of variables on attention and perception of auditory and visual patterns, with special emphasis on the role of temporal structure. Rhythm is essential to life and well-being. It is also the primary element of the phenomenon of music, according to Barbara Crow, who addresses rhythm and music in her book, Music and Soul Making. She references numerous sources who extol rhythm's essential role in music. This is the amazing Nacho Aramani. So Nacho is the composer, instrumentalist and producer of the listening program, and one of the most fascinating men that I've ever had the privilege of meeting. Nacho's idea is that rhythm is different patterns in relation to the pulse. So given that rhythm is essential and that beat or pulse is fundamental to rhythm, the pulse is critical for our experience of rhythms, external and internal, musical and non-musical. As we will learn, an accessible beat or pulse is a basic characteristic of all in-time compositions. Pulse is vital. It's no surprise that our own pulse is with us as a vibrational influence from about 23 to 24 days gestation. We are not only born with rhythmic foundation, we've had it since early on in our fetal development. And we developed with the influence of our own beat. In the rhythm checklist that's as part of your references, you'll see a big standout. And that question is, did the baby have a poor suck reflex? So if that rhythm has been off from day one, that baby's ability to feed and comfort itself and to thrive is compromised, right from that very first get-go. So let's move this discussion into a review of how rhythm matters to us as individuals, right on up to the rhythms of our planet. So rhythm matters. It matters personally, from a cellular function, growth and development, heartbeat and rate, respiration, blood flow, cranial sacral rhythms, brain activity, muscle fiber activity, organ motility, digestion, sexuality and reproduction, biochemistry, all of our days and our ways, who we are. Societally, communally and culturally, our belonging, our group behaviour, our cohesion, our group of who, what, when, where and how, our celebration, our play, our work, our communication, our worship and our traditions. When we think about it globally, ecologically and biologically, the rotations and revolutions of the Earth and the Moon relationship to the Sun, our lunar and tidal cycles, the rise and fall of waves, seasonal changes, plant cycles, agricultural resources, migration, the list goes on and on. Chronobiology is a rapidly developing field informing us not only about time and timing as managed by our internal master timekeeper, I'm going to try and say this right, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in the anterior part of the hypothalamus, but of the essential rhythmic connection that we have with our planet and its rhythmic relationship with the sun and the moon. It has to do with the timing and duration of biological activity in humans, animals, plants, and cellular organisms. The circadian rhythm mentioned a few moments ago is the most important chronobiological rhythm. This illustration depicts roughly the 24-hour cycle in humans, within which smaller cycles of biological activity occur. Advances in chronobiology research focused on the circadian rhythm are influencing medicine and wellness. The Medical Chronobiology Program and Brigham and Williams Hospital in Boston are researching the relationship of disease and the 24-hour body clock or behaviours that occur on a regular basis. The sleep and chronobiology research at Brown University, where neuroscientist and TLP sleep co-inventor Dr. Seth Horowitz researched the effects of sound on sleep and concluded that sound can be used to help people fall asleep and stay asleep. And those of you who experience the benefits of our own Sleep Genius program that Dr. Seth Horowitz produced in conjunction with ABT will understand. Chronopharmacology, which takes into account the effectiveness of pharmaceutical interventions at specific times in the circadian rhythm. And then additionally, chronobiological musical treatments are being developed for depression by Dr. Vera Brands, who is also a member of the Scientific Advisory Board for ABT. Dr. Brands is the Director of Music Medicine Research Program at the Paracelsus Medical University with her colleagues in Salzburg, Austria. So according to researcher, musician and author Daniel Levitin, he wrote a book that's a good read. It's called This Is Your Brain on Music. Using functional neuroimaging, we know that music activates almost every area of the brain. It activates more brain areas than any other known source of stimulation. Among these areas are the auditory cortex, the sensory cortex, prefrontal cortex, motor cortex, visual cortex, cerebellum, hippocampus, amygdala, and the nucleus accumbens. At a lower level, it's been suggested that music's strong, discernible, and organised rhythm or pulse serves to affect the brainstem through entrainment. With music having this kind of pervasive brain activating capacity and rhythm being fundamental to music, we can conclude that rhythm has power. So, in summary, rhythm is founded on the pulse, steady beat in time, and is always with us and around us. It brings order and organisation to sound and movement in time. It entrains, and it is fundamental to the brain's most pervasively activating source of stimulation, music. So the discussion of sound and time raises several questions to think about for ourselves and our clients. What kind of rhythm and tempo does it have? How do the complex and changing units of time within your days affect you and your timing? What are the external rhythms that influence you and how you feel, what you do and how you time it? What about time changes, transitions? What about your own internal rhythms? How are you affected physiologically and psychologically by the relationship of the external and internal polymeters, polyrhythms, and variety of tempo in your days? And I guess what can you do about it is a big question. I suggest you develop your own awareness of rhythm and time and shape that. Listen and engage. I'm not going to do this listening experience with you now. I've provided you with a link on your website to access the sample of the combined and the percussion music samples. So we're going to move on to sound frequencies and function. So our learning objectives is always to credit Dr. Tomatis, for he's the grandfather of all of the sound work that we enjoy today. We're going to look at the progression of sound frequencies and how they are arranged in the inTime program, and look at the colours and how they correspond to the different sound frequencies, and identify the general feeling of each zone and its related functions. So as we know, Dr. Tomatis was the French ENT and inventor who was an early innovator of listening therapies. And Dr. Tomatis taught us that the voice can only reproduce what the ear can hear. And one of the most important contributions in his finding was that certain sounds, frequency sounds, are associated with specific functions. Through these clinical observations and audiometric testing, Dr. Tomatis established 3 zones relating to ranges of low, mid, and high frequency sound, and recognised relationships between deficits in tuning into tones within those ranges and functional limitations. Tomatis identified his Zone 1 as the body zone, Zone 2 as speech and language, and Zone 3 as creativity. Each zone was comprised of numerous functions. He found that training listening using acoustically modified music, following a program based on his observations and testings related to frequency and function, helped his patients improve in their areas of deficiency. As a rather concrete example, deficits in response to frequencies within the speech and language zone were likely to be accompanied by observable deficits in speech and voice. Tomatis found that providing these frequencies as part of a graded progression of frequency stimulation using modified music restored listening function and improved speech function. So Dr. Tomatis' work serves as a basis for the 4-zone framework used in inTime. It's nearly the identical framework that has been successfully applied within the listening program for over a decade. The thing to note here is that inTime frequency progression begins with training emphasis on the low frequencies, and that the grounding emphasis of the low frequencies is evident in the program, especially in the A phases. This diagram we've come to refer to as our sound man serves to represent where the zones or frequency ranges influence a person. Here, we're most importantly going with a feel that the zone-specific frequency emphasis brings rather than identifying specific functions. We know that blue is balanced and integration of all zones. Red provides energy, alertness, organisation, creativity, insight. Orange is very focused, providing concentration, mental processes, cognition, interaction, communication. And green is very grounded and anchoring in our body, our self-regulation, our body awareness, our balance, our left-right integration, our coordination and our timing. We believe each zone contributes to the brain-body connection. We believe that sound frequency is a powerful influence on all of us, and when sound frequencies are delivered by way of music with a strong, steady, accessible beat, entrainment naturally facilitates our engagement or connection or syncing up with those frequencies. So now we're going to look at inTime in a little bit more depth and look at the learning objectives is to understand the general structure of inTime and the modular design, which are a little different to what you're probably familiar with level 1 spectrum and achieve. So inTime was developed in response to providers' requests for a rhythm-based program. The inspiration behind the program was to originate a whole new sound that feels good, based on orchestrated percussive world rhythms and using the structure of musical rhythms to support sound frequency stimulation. A commitment to a fresh, cohesive presentation founded upon clear rationale, neuroscience research, and intercultural tradition has been central to each step of inTime's creation. The program was created with the intention of improving rhythm awareness and timing, the choice, judgment, or control of when something should be done, and improve listening and functions directly and indirectly related to the ear and its connections through brain and body. Through listening and naturally moving to engaging, structured rhythmic music supporting progressive sound frequency training, the listener experiences richly nourishing sound as he is stimulated to find and keep the beat. Opportunities for active, expressive listening or tuning into oneself, either through movement or voice, naturally present themselves during music listening. Activities that follow listening build upon active listening and the relationship between auditory and motor systems brought about by rhythm. inTime was created to engage multiple brain regions through a combination of music, rhythm, and beat-based activities. As mentioned earlier, our health, movement, emotional well-being, social relatedness, cognition, engagement are among the many attributes linked to rhythm. Rhythm awareness and timing are foundations for self-awareness and regulation, sensory motor function and interaction. And as we've learned, rhythm matters to just about everything. We all do better when we're in sync or in rhythm. We may feel more of a connection with others and the events in our lives, more settled or more focused and organised or in a better mood. We may notice our own equanimity, our mental calmness, composure or balance, and that we're moving better or simply we're having a good day. When we're out of rhythm, we may experience a very deterioration of that balance in our lives and feel anxious or out of it. We may have sleep problems. We may have problems applying ourselves at home or school or work in the community, or have difficulty with our relationships. Or sometimes we'll even find ourselves with chemical dependence and start having cravings. It's very, very interesting. So improved ability to tune into sound vibration provides stimulation to support brain function and contributes to changes in sensory processing, motor coordination, responsiveness to stress, sociability, emotionality, communication, executive function, and creativity. So there are several working parts of inTime. We're looking at music, temporal structure, entrainment, progression of emphasis of low, medium, and high frequency ranges, familiarity, novelty, patterns, neuroacoustic modifications, and then the movement and activities. These working parts comprise the input that, when provided over time at a specific frequency, intensity, and duration, will help promote neural and behavioural change given the propensity of the auditory brain to change in response to regular, structured acoustic stimulation. So if we look at the music first, every beat you feel, rhythm you hear, and sound that stimulates your brain and body was created, recorded, mixed, and mastered with the inspiration and intentions reviewed. With the natural brain activating and rhythmically engaging, power of music in mind, the musical nature of inTime is and has always been fundamental. All tunable instruments used for inTime were tuned at 432 Hz rather than the A440 Hz, the Pythagorean or scientific tuning based on intervals which are perfect fifths. This tuning resonates with the Earth's fundamental beat of 8 Hz and resonates naturally with the brain and body. Rhythm is an essential element of music, and the medicine of the body is what Christine Stevens referred to, and it's key to the music of inTime. Rhythm and rhythmic influences from regions, traditions, and cultures around the globe, including Spain, West Africa, North Africa, the Middle East, South India, Cuba, South America, and North America, and rhythmic styles such as flamenco and Afro-Cuban are blended to shape inTime's dynamic intercultural character. The music of inTime is recorded in high-definition sound. Listening to inTime is to be done through headphones. It is mixed and mastered for spatial stereo headphone delivery. It can be played through speakers of a good sound quality, albeit they will be less intense, and you can use this as an adjunct to therapy. And the important piece to remember, inTime music is organised into 2 parts. Albums 1 to 4 are just orchestrated percussive rhythms, so percussion only. Album 5 to 8 are foundational rhythms with new melodies, and we refer to them as the combined albums. The temporal or time structure for the program in each module is deep-rooted in the pulse or the beat. It stays at a steady tempo through each 9-minute listening experience. That's right, you're all used to a 15-minute listening experience with our Level 1 Spectrum and Achieve program. inTime is a 9-minute listening session. Connecting with a pulse or beat that works for and with us amidst a complex yet cohesive time structure is a key aspect of inTime. Connecting with the beat can be simple to do, yet it can bring challenges. It is a skill we are called upon to daily apply if we are to function at our personal best within the complexities of the lives we lead. With inTime, the complexity comes about when different rhythms or patterns occur within the same meter or cycle, and or when different meters bring along new rhythms, melodies, and harmonies occurring within a different time framework. The general metric and rhythmic progression of each album is from least complex to most complex, and then back. So based upon the predominant meter, polymeter, polyrhythm of each composition. So each album begins with timing and rhythm that is easy to connect with and relatively simple, and then progresses into more challenging timing and rhythm, and then finishes up with a temporal structure of less complexity. The steady pulse is there to guide you through the most complicated rhythms, so you may not even notice they're complicated. So module 1 and 4 are less complex than module 2 and 3. And that's very different again to what we've come to learn with our level 1 spectrum and achieve programs. So where inTime differs from many life situations is that cohesion is ensured. With inTime, the pulse is always accessible and the timing of acoustic events will always sync up. What a perfect opportunity to develop rhythm awareness and a sense of timing. Through its temporal structure, inTime emphasis on the pulse and musical rhythms offer entraining. This input helps engage the listener's body and attention with sound in time. The variety of rhythms and the varied metric structure characteristics of inTime allow for the application of the ISO principle, increasing the likelihood of connecting with the listener where he's at and bringing him along as he syncs up. To many of you, the pulse will come automatically and effortlessly. You'll feel it. And the connection with the pulse will likely guide your listening. You and the beat resonate in time. Entrainment carries us along both rhythmically and in terms of the specific sound frequency stimulation associated with the rhythms. Entrainment naturally stimulates synchronistic movement. Training emphasizing sound frequencies has been successfully used in the field of intentional sound and music to help people make functional changes. Sound frequency training is a key feature of inTime and is done in an entirely new way through rhythmic music. In order to provide this sound frequency emphasis as naturally as possible, over 100 percussion instruments were sampled, analysed in terms of their frequency range and their sounds, and catalogued. This frequency information was the basis for instrumentation choices for inTime compositions. So effectively, the instruments played in each piece were chosen, individually recorded, and combined with primary consideration given to their characteristic sound frequency and natural resonance. This careful selection of instrumentation and composition minimized the need for filtration. At least 20 different instruments were played for each piece, along with specific instruments being played and then recorded more than once to produce more than one rhythm with that specific instrument. The definition, intensity, and complexity of the sound frequency stimulation is achieved through timing. Timing of how the instruments were played, how rhythms, melodies, and harmonies were combined, and how those relationships were refined for psychoacoustic processes. inTime is organised to provide a balance of familiarity, novelty, both within modules and from one module to another. The ABC modular design serves to define the general flow of each listening experience. The steady beat provides that basis of familiarity. Varied meter and multimeters, abundant rhythms and relationships of rhythms within polyrhythmic structures of inTime, varied instrumentation, spatial locations of sounds, and volume variations provide the novel stimulation needed to maintain engagement. Rhythm is pattern. In inTime, we are continuously presented with patterns. Some are easy to recognize and follow, and some are not. Some are short sequences and some are long. Some are ongoing, some come and go. They all begin and end. Following a rhythm is following a pattern. Patterns are continuously presented within inTime. Pattern recognition is malleable. inTime presents opportunities to work on it. In the mixing process, along with musicality and aesthetics, special consideration is given to all elements of sound: frequency, amplitude, spatiality, and of course time. Neuroacoustic modifications within inTime are used to emphasize the sonic attributes and musical features of each piece, helping highlight sound frequencies within the featured ranges, ensure accessibility of the pulse and distinct rhythms, support organization around the midline, and create a balanced dichotic listening experience in spatial stereo sound. Attention to, discrimination of, and engagement with sound frequencies and temporal structure of the music is key and is achieved through volume adjustments, enhancing the already transient nature of percussive sound, and to accentuate specific rhythmic patterns, or to help create foreground and background. The dynamic contrast between sound frequencies with and without volume contrast. Audio bursting or rapid volume changes from somewhere between 15 to 22 decibels within the tracks of specific instruments. This only occurs in the intensive training phase. Collectively, the volume changes and contrasts are designed to stimulate tuning into the most relevant input while attenuating or dampening loud sounds. Spatial organization of the sound is achieved through panning, the process whereby instruments are deliberately placed and sometimes moved within the stereo sound field. Movement to auditory rhythm and to rhythmic music is an indication of the connection between auditory and motor systems. It is likely to have been occurring long before recorded history. Research now suggests that training emphasizing movement to a musical beat may improve the synchrony of the auditory neural system. Movement naturally occurring during inTime listening and optional activities following listening, including album 9, which is a body percussion album we'll talk about later, links our brains and our bodies with time as we hear and feel the beat. So now we're going to look at how the music of inTime is organized. So you can see here very clearly albums 1 to 4, as I was mentioned earlier, percussion only. So album 1, you'll see we actually start at the green zone. So when you compare it to level 1, spectrum and inTime, they start in the blue zone. And you can see here that the blue zone is actually the 4th album in progression. So we start with SI, we move to speech and language, onto high spectrum, and then to full spectrum. Then we move into the combined albums, again repeating sensory integration, green zone, speech and language, orange zone, high spectrum, red zone, and full spectrum in the blue zone. Each album consists of 4, as I said, 9-minute modules. You'll all be used to 15, but they still have that ABC modular design. So the modules are organized such that modules 2 and 3 are relatively more complex or intense than modules 1 and 4. And that's an important thing for you to retain and remember, so that when you get to program planning, if you've got a particularly sensitive listener that you're starting to work with, you may consider using modules 1 and 4 for the first week, and then introduce modules 2 and 3 the second week using the same album. So in albums 1 to 4, the interrelationships of rhythm and meters create the melodies of each module. The emphasis is on rhythm and percussion. Yet what we listen to is very musical and carries the featured ranges of sound frequency. These albums will be referred to as percussion. In these albums, the percussive rhythms take on a more familiar role as the backbone, or what drives the music. Melodies played on newly introduced instruments, including piano, guitar, harp, charango, flute, and voice, provide novelty and may help the listener integrate complexity. Featured sound frequencies are provided through percussion and the other instruments. The consistency with which earlier rhythms are applied to the different musical styles of these albums show us that our rhythm, our pulse, the beat can take us anywhere. These albums are referred to as combined. So we have two series of albums within inTime. Albums 1 to 4 are percussion, and albums 5 to 8 are what we call combined. So why the emphasis on rhythm? Why the exclusive emphasis on rhythm and percussion in the first half of the program, and the use of these percussive rhythm as the foundation for the other half? Let's have a look at this, and it will directly relate to protocol choices to be made when we get to program planning. So we know that the pulse is foundational in many ways and common to us all. As I said, that pulse begins in each of us from about 23 days gestation, and we grow with the rhythmic influence of our own beat, even before we have the capacity to sense it. Perhaps this is why it is viewed as the base of the temporal hierarchy of music. As early as 14 weeks gestation, fetal cycles or activity and rest can be detected. Vibration of our mother's rhythms and movements influence the physical being of the fetus through gestational development. And as the fetus begins to be able to hear and react to sound through bone conduction at approximately 16 weeks gestation, it is a stimulus for the developing auditory nervous system, as are some of the low-frequency vibrations of other external sounds. So rhythm is essential to life and is likely to be the essence of music's power to stimulate the nervous system and functional systems ranging from physiological to emotional. Rhythm's presence dating back to an uncertain time of mankind's very remote past. Among many things, it is fascinating that man's actual marking of the passing of time is likely to have begun with the awareness of sounds made as objects were struck. As we've mentioned earlier, rhythm provides pattern. As early as infancy, listening to rhythmic music has been found to bring about rhythmic movement, and it is the beat of the music that has been found to do it. So we're emphasising rhythm. Let's look at why one half of the program is dedicated to that percussive sound. We are familiar with the sound of percussion instruments establishing and maintaining rhythm. We've come to associate the distinct timbre of percussion instruments with the beat and unknowingly listen for percussion to get the rhythm. It gets our attention. There's percussive sound around us in daily life. It's environmental, it's prevalent. The dynamic range of percussive sound is very wide, making it an excellent choice of stimulation for sound frequency training. Let's take a look at the sound waves of a djembe compared to that of a cello. So the top labelled percussion is that of a djembe, a hand drum. We can see the djembe waveform is distinctly different over time compared to the cello. This diagram nicely illustrates the sharp onset of the strike and the natural decay. It's easy to envisage how percussive sound is similar in nature to the transient rather than sustained quality and intensity changes and contrasts of audio bursted sound. It also shows us how patterns of percussion sound may be easier to identify than those of other instruments. You providers will be familiar with the three-phase design of a listening module. inTime has adapted that same modular design. So we know that A is our workout or our engagement period. I need to go back a slide, sorry. A is the phase of establishment and the introduction to rhythms, clear patterns, that accessibility of the pulse, that steady tempo, to establish that sound reference at midline and to begin a balanced dichotic as in left-right ear stimulation. B is what we call the training phase, and it's intended to provide the maximum sound frequency training within that featured frequency zone, while building upon the temporal structure established in the A phase. So the B phase is characterized by an identifiable pulse, elaborate rhythm and cycle, dominance of featured frequency zone, greater density of tones within that featured zone, more dynamic contrast of volume and frequency, audio bursting within that featured zone, organisation around the midline, balanced dichotic stimulation, and possible spatial stereodynamics. And then we move into C, which is the integration phase, which is a coherent rhythmic transition that still have that identifiable pulse, but eventual return to full spectrum of sound with a low frequency emphasis, eventual reduction in contrast, and continued organisation around the midline, but it's very cohesive. So it's like the grounding piece at the end of that listening. So given that we have a 9-minute listening session, obviously A is approximately 3 minutes, B is approximately 3 minutes, and C is approximately 3 minutes. So the most intensive part of a training in that 9-minute session is going to occur in that middle B cycle, in that middle part of that session. Dichotic listening occurs when the left and right ears receive different inputs simultaneously. When right and left ear stimulation is balanced within inTime, dichotic stimulation allows for ongoing right and left non-dynamic and dynamic acoustic differences. Differences in presentation of sound on left and right may be noted in instrumentation, timing and rhythm, volume and sound frequency. The overall musical experience is an integration of what is received by each ear. So again, you have your listening experience. If you go back to the link that was provided to you to access this PowerPoint presentation, you'll see that you have a link there to sample both the percussion only and then the combined style of listening. So percussion only being albums 1 to 4 and then combined being albums 5 to 8. So I guess now with a understanding of the music of inTime, we're ready to learn about protocol development. So I look forward to you joining me with our live training session that we have together. You will have received your link to our Zoom meeting room. If you have any questions from the slides that I've gone through with you today, jot them down, and when we have our live day together, I encourage it to be a very interactive, dynamic process. So I welcome any questions that you have. Our main focus together is going to be on program planning and different protocols and the rationale of why we would use those protocols. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you together soon for our time together to finish learning about inTime and see you certified as a provider of the inTime program. Thank you.